Hey guys, welcome back. It's ThiccBoi here. So today I want to discuss a little game that you likely wouldn't have heard of. Released in the last days of May, amidst all of the pre-E3 hype, it kind of just slipped under the radar. I want to talk about it because I really feel like more light should be shed on this game. It was undoubtedly one of the most charming experiences I've had playing a game in recent memory. Today, we're going to talk about Yoku's Island Express. So, for a bit of context, metroidvania games are kind of my thing. Metroid Prime, after all, up here, is undoubtedly my favorite game of all time. Guacamelee, I played that on the Vita, I was very fondly remembered. Most recently, Hollow Knight, which I just completed on the Switch, and man, that's a separate video. That game is unbelievable. Anyway, so it was after my completion of Hollow Knight that I sort of was looking for something else. I started to dig a bit deeper. In my searching, I eventually came across Yoku's Island Express, a 2D Metroidvania with a charming aesthetic and very positive impressions from those who had played it. Man, I downloaded this game at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't stop playing it till I finished it just after midnight. So, with that out of the way, what is Yoku's Island Express? Essentially, Yoku's Island Express is a fusion of the Metroidvania 2D platforming sort of subgenre and pinball. Now, I know what you're likely thinking. How the hell can those two go together?
They make a terrific pair. They went together like lamb and tuna fish.
See, in Yoku's Island Express, there is no jump button at all. You must instead traverse the game's small scale, yet thoughtfully designed and beautifully drawn world through employing the use of pinball flippers. Left trigger pops the blue paddles, right trigger pops the orange paddles. It's that straightforward. It's through the use of these flippers that you are able to make your way around the map and fling yourself into the game's bosses throughout Yoku's 7 to 10 hour playthrough time. Story-wise, it's pretty light. You play as Yoku, a dung beetle from what I can tell, who has recently taken the role of island postman from the retiring postmaster, who is a pterodactyl by the way. After being given the simple task of delivering a letter to some dude at the main town, you will eventually discover that there is a grave threat to the safety of the island, and you must roll around the map to stop the bad thing from happening. It's all very stock standard as far as narrative goes, but delivered with such charm, it actually serves pretty well as the player's motivation to push on through the game's main quest. And on the point of the game's main quest, that realistically is the whole game. There are some side areas and some optional things to do along the way. I mean, you can collect these wickerlings, which are, if you've played Hollow Knight, the equivalent of the grubs. So basically just collectibles around the map. There are also a few side activities issued out of the main hub town, where you are tasked with delivering some packages as the postmaster to a variety of locations around the map. So, is the game any good? The short answer is hell yes. Firstly, it feels incredible. The sense of weight on the ball that you push around is tweaked so perfectly so as to ensure that moving around the game's environment and puzzles is super satisfying. Whether you're rolling around the map or flying through one of the game's many pinball sections, it feels great. And this distinction between the platforming and pinball sections of the game is an important one. See, Yoku's Island Express exists in two states. On one hand, you are moving through the game's areas just as you would any other 2D platformer, to obviously get to the next place and progress through the map. These are the more standard sections of platforming and traversal of the environment, albeit without a jump button. On the other hand, you'll occasionally be exploring and pop through a small hole in a wall, ride all the way down this track and into a traditional pinball scenario, where it's essentially a pinball table. You've got to trigger a certain switch or travel down a certain lane or break a certain boulder to progress through the next area. There are locked doors in these pinball sections preventing you from going forward that you must unlock within the bounds of this pinball space. These pinball sections are some of the standout moments in Yoku's Island Express, and I think that's because the game does such a brilliant job of pacing everything. On this duality of Yoku's existence, it's important to emphasize just how refreshing it all is. There's a lot to be said for games being unique nowadays. So often, many new games purport to be these groundbreaking experiences. Most ambitious ever. Biggest map. Blah, blah, blah. In the end, it rarely counts for much. Yoku's Island Express, however, managed to genuinely surprise me by simply fusing platforming and pinball. The game itself is stunning. Villa Gorilla, the Swedish studio behind the game, have lovingly crafted an endearing aesthetic that almost feels instantly nostalgic, like recalling the picture books you flipped through as a child. Soft watercolor artwork throughout the game's grassy knolls and icy peaks and barren desert environments seldom cease to impress, with more striking pastel colors set in contrast to highlight points of interest, and of course, the pinball flippers that launch you through the journey. The whole package is visually beautiful, and reminds me very much of the oft-praised Rayman art style, albeit with the sharpness levels turned all the way down. The visual beauty of these environments is punctuated by a wonderfully composed soundtrack. At around 14 tracks, it's not all that vast, but the select few tracks do a tremendous job of establishing the game's atmosphere. I won't dwell on this too much as it really does speak for itself. Suffice to say it's great. Just listen here for a moment to the game's opening track, which oozes with tropical charm. Or this. And this. These tracks vary from tropical grooves filled with ukuleles and maracas and marimbas and pan flutes and warm vocal tracks to something much slower and darker. These bass tracks that fade in as you delve deeper into the more cavernous areas of the game. In true Metroidvania fashion, the game asks you to traverse its map by acquiring upgrades that allow you to explore further. These range from a grappling hook and other movement abilities as well. Given how few there are in the game, I'll not mention them so as not to spoil them. They certainly aren't groundbreaking abilities, but it's kind of fun to go into a 2D platformer not knowing what tools the game is going to give you, so I'll allow you to explore for yourself. Along the way you will also collect fruit, the in-game currency of Yoku's Island Express. Fruit allows you to buy a couple of items from a select few vendors in the game, of course, but more importantly it serves as the means by which you are able to unlock new paths. See, in Metroidvania games, optional paths are extremely common, but they're also hidden, sometimes unfairly so. Occasionally this can be satisfying, to go off the beaten track and discover a treasure. Other times it can result in one of those, how the fuck was I supposed to know that moment. In these kinds of games, I generally find this style of secret pathfinding tedious. When I play a game, I want to know I have explored a whole area without having to arbitrarily slash a sword or shoot a blaster at a rock in every corner of the map. As a fan of the Metroidvania subgenre, I really dislike this style of level design, and I don't think it's at all appropriate for 2D level design, given the inherently neutered perspective compared to 3D environments. Yoku does away with this personally frustrating trope by simply locking off hidden areas behind the in-game currency. You'll frequently come across grayed out flippers that require you to pay before you're able to launch yourself through the air to an optional path. Now, at face value, this sounds annoying as fuck, but in practice, it works really well. Instead of hiding stuff away in obscure locations, the game asks you to simply explore the area a bit more, acquire the necessary currency, and come back. No tricks, no nonsense walls, no illusions, just a bit of patience and a simple compromise, and I really enjoyed this design decision. This made exploring the world a joy. Instead of wondering about all the stuff I'd missed, I knew exactly what I had to do to see all the game had to offer. Structurally, Yoku's Island Express quickly introduces you to Mokumana Village, the game's hub. Like Firelink's Shrine in Dark Souls, And yes, I know it is a meme to compare things to Dark Souls, but it's pretty appropriate here, so I'm going to do it anyway. This village acts as the central point through which you make your way through the 3 main areas of the game. And just like Dark Souls and the more recent Hollow Knight, you'll open up shortcuts throughout, tangle and weave through the entire game world, giving the whole gameplay environment a sense of cohesion and interconnectedness. There's also a fast travel mechanic that you unlock later in the game, which serves to bypass what would otherwise be some more tedious backtracking. One could argue that the game's map is small, and it would certainly be a valid criticism. For me, it wasn't really an issue. I much prefer something like Lordran than Skyrim, for the latter simply feels like an algorithmically generated height map. I mean, sure, Skyrim was fun to explore, but when you have something as vertical and asset diverse as Lordran, it's simply a far more curated and personal experience in my eyes. Yoku takes this same philosophy and runs with it to great effect. In the end though, it's odd to compare Yoku's Island Express to other games because it's just so damn unique. At 7 to 10 hours long, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it brilliantly paces the adventure from when you first drift onto Moku Mana right until the closing credits. In short, it's fun, and you should play it. Thanks for watching, take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.